What's good, everybody? This is Intellect, and I'm back at you with another video. So the draft was moved to November 18th, which only further delays what has felt like 10 years of time to think and talk about this draft. There are only two ways this could go. Either my analysis gets exponentially better with the added time and information, or I just start overthinking things and everything starts getting a little weird over here. Regardless, know that I believe what is in this big board is my most accurate to date and least bound to whatever hyper narrative one could fall victim to. Shout out to my OG supporters who've been rocking with the channel since we started this whole thing. If you've seen my previous big boards, you know the drill, but I'm going to try to put an emphasis on the big changes and tell you why I think this way while giving you that top 60 that you came here for. Let's go ahead and get into the big board 3.0. And I'm not doing another one of these until the week of the draft, so enjoy it. Back at like the beginning of the year, I was one of those people who felt like this was a weak draft, but it really isn't. Maybe there isn't the clear-cut, surefire stars we've grown accustomed to, but this second round alone has the potential to be full of rock-solid contributors. A lot of the guys in this section have potential to become role players in some capacity, but whether it's injuries, fit in the modern NBA, or anything else to do with their game, they landed back here. Mason Jones has moved into the top 60. Jones was easily one of the best players in the SEC last season. There are some people that view Jones as a first-round talent. I don't want to start off negative, so I won't, but I think he fits firmly in that 50 to 60 range. He got to the line at will and was one of the most efficient players in college basketball while still having really streaky moments. I think it'll be a big adjustment for him playing off the ball and being a role player, and he also needs a lot of work defensively, but anyone who was as productive as he was is worth giving a shot. I just recently did videos on Skylar Mays and Miles Powell, so go check those out. At 53, Nick Richards is a really solid bet as a rim running and shot blocking big. He doesn't have the ceiling of a lot of the guys in the draft, and he probably won't develop into much more than he already is skill-wise, but he already does those things really well. Rounding off this section, we've got Kareem Maine and Abdoulaye Ndoye. Maine was a 5-star post-grad prospect who had offers from the likes of Kansas, Michigan State, and Texas, but decided to forego college and head to the NBA. He's definitely a project pick, but in the late second round, guys like him are hard to come by. He's supremely talented and has great physical tools that should only improve from here. Ndoye is an intriguing wing prospect who has a lot of international experience. He's been on the draft radar for several years, but has finally decided to make it official. He's surely one of the most interesting players in terms of style and skill set, so if you haven't already, I'd go check out my report on him. There has been a good amount of movement here in this section, but man are all of these guys talented. From the draft and stash guy with high potential in Yam Madar, to one of the most prolific college scorers ever in Marcus Howard, to solid guards in Dotson, Pritchard, and Flynn, to star Duke freshmen in Cassius Stanley and Vernon Carey. Teams of any caliber should be doing whatever they can to get into the 35 to 50 range in this draft. There's a ton of value here. The biggest movers in this section are probably Tyshawn Alexander and Devon Dotson for two different reasons. Though a lot of people are still high on Dotson, I don't think he's good enough in a few key areas to ultimately be a major contributor. That doesn't mean he can't improve as a shooter, first and foremost, and then as a passer. But he's not someone who projects as a great offensive threat off the ball, and at 6'2", lineups get tricky when he still needs to guard ones, even though he can be great at it. Now Alexander is a guy who fits with most teams. Everybody needs those players from 6'4" to 6'9", who can guard a couple of positions, hit threes, and make a play for themselves when they need to. Tyshawn Alexander can do just that, and his transition into the league will be a bit easier than a guy like Dotson's, though Dotson's ceiling is likely higher. Now in this section, we start getting into players who all have a legitimate chance of being first-round picks. It's also where I have that second tier of really solid bigs with varying play styles after Okongwu and Wiseman. Trey Jones and Cassius Winston are two of the biggest team-first guys in the draft. What they lack in certain areas, they more than make up for with heart and IQ. While Jones' prowess is mostly on the defensive end, and Winston is a great offensive player, they are both guys who help you build a culture and win games. Elijah Hughes is the guy who I think can surprise some people in this draft. He's one of my personal favorites to watch, and I think his combination of size, athleticism, and a highly skilled offensive game make him someone I would truly consider in the first round. Syracuse played zone, so we really didn't get to see him play matchup defense, but he had some flashes of tenacity that were really intriguing. And I know the Syracuse guys haven't had a lot of success in the past, but I think Hughes can change the narrative. At 31, we've got Aleksej Pokusevski. Now, I've gone back and forth with the idea of him as a player in the past, but I think this is the area I feel most comfortable putting him at. He's definitely a boom or bust guy, where the best case scenario, he's someone who I could see being a real difference maker. On the contrary, he could fizzle out of the league in a few years for a multitude of issues. A lot of how good he is going to come down to which organization picks and develops him, but that raw talent and ability is certainly there. Now as we get into the top 30, the talent starts to rise. Number 26 is Jay Scrubb. After getting the chance to take a true up-close look at his games, by that I mean I've literally watched 20 to 25 John A. Logan games, I've concluded that Scrubb is a first-round talent. Guys with his combinations of skills and athleticism don't come along often, and after seeing him work out, it's clear that placing him in the 40s and 50s was kind of wild. Granted, it's not like his games were in front of me on ESPN every night. Watch for his profile to rise over the next 8 weeks and possibly pull off something that most would call unfathomable, going from JUCO to first-round NBA draft pick. There's a ton of value here in these 20s. If you've been on the channel before, you know how I feel about Grant Riller. The potential of guys like Tyrell Terry and Theo Maledon are truly high, though there are a few things holding them back from being in that mid-teen or lottery conversation for me. The Frenchman, Theo Maledon, could end up being one of this year's steals. His craftiness and high-level experience is rivaled by few in this draft, and he's been a pro for years. His physical development and development as a shooter are going to have a lot to do with how good he becomes, but I do enjoy his game, and I think he'll be an effective player. Nothing that I say here is really going to be substantially new information, but hopefully it serves as better context to the scouting videos and the previous big boards that I've made. Desmond Bane seems to be gaining traction. He was firmly set in the second round from the few mock drafts I had looked at when I uploaded his scouting video, but now he seems to be a lock for the first round. I think he's somebody who can make an instant impact in the league as a 3-and-D guard, who surprisingly showed himself to be one of the better pick-and-roll passers in the draft as well. Jahmias Ramsey is another one of my favorite prospects. He has the makings of a lethal scoring 2-guard. In terms of developing parts of your game, the handle is probably the easiest, and as he further develops that, he could be lethal from the perimeter. Saddiq Bey's ranking has dropped a bit since the previous videos. I don't necessarily think anything different about him as a player, I just think the few guys that I put ahead of him have really intriguing upside, while Bey is likely just a really good role player at his best. Again, I want to say that's not a knock on him, but it'll make sense when you see who I've got ahead of him. At the 17th spot is RJ Hampton. From all accounts, he's been working hard on his body, gaining that necessary weight and strength he needs to unlock a lot of his game at the next level. In addition, his shot seems to be coming along too, specifically in the footwork department. I still very much think Hampton is a work in progress, but right now, he's matching the swag and raw talent with the work, and that's always a dangerous combo. Jaden McDaniels is another one of those guys with tremendous talent. He didn't perform how I thought he would during his lone year at Washington, which is part of the reason he's at 16 and not in the top 5 just based on talent alone. The kid has a chance to be the best player in the draft, and that's not something I would say about most people ranked near him. Number 15, Aaron Nesmith was one of the best shooters in college basketball before he went down with a season-ending injury. He's a solid defender, and while I have questions about the rest of his game, he certainly has an elite skill. At 14, Precious Achiuwa has the potential to be one of, if not the most versatile players in this draft. He was more of a wing or perimeter-oriented player in high school and coming into college, but as Wiseman went down and Memphis made adjustments, he showed great potential as a small ball 5. He's got to improve as a shooter and just add more polish to his game in general, but overall, I really like what he brings to the table. Coming in at 13 is Tyrese Maxey. Maxey didn't put up a great statistical season, but he showed enough, specifically on defense, to warrant being a lottery pick. Kentucky has a long list of NBA players, and I think he's one of those guys who ends up being better in the league, similarly to what we saw Tyler Hero do, and even Keldon Johnson once he finally got his minutes at the end of the season. Cole Anthony has a 12 spot once again. He's a guy who still has really high potential and should greatly benefit from NBA spacing. I am a bit concerned about his ability to affect the game outside of being a scorer, but nonetheless, he's someone who has a ton of value should he fall into the mid-teens. Number 11 is Isaac Okoro. Okoro is that prototypical wing player in the mold of a Jimmy Butler or Gerald Wallace. He's not a good shooter from the outside, but he's a versatile defender with a motor, and he showed flashes offensively that are really encouraging. Though he may not have the hype of some of the other guys left on his list, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up one of the 5 best in the class. This area of my big board has had the least movement, but there are a few important changes. Number 10 comes Devin Vassell. Vassell is a plug-and-play guy. Although I don't think he'll be a star, his ability to fit into any system on day one is something you can't necessarily say about the majority of guys I have ranked in the top 14. He's someone I'm sure will become a contributor. Tyrese Halliburton is number 9. I feel like I haven't heard people talk about Halliburton for months, but I still think he's one of the best prospects in this draft. He has a certain pace and fluidity to his game that you can't really teach. He's one of the best passers in this class, and being 6'5" definitely makes everything easier for him. The number 8 guy is someone I've championed for a while, and that is Kyra Lewis Jr. Lewis is easily the fastest player in this draft, and probably the fastest since De'Aaron Fox, a guy whose game is similar to his in some ways. Lewis has no true weaknesses in his game, and I think if he builds on his slight frame, he can really be a positive asset in the league. Number 7, Obi Toppin is a player who I'm indifferent about. He's probably the most entertaining player in this class, and he has the highlights of a Monstar. But defensively, he just wasn't very good last year, simply put. He doesn't move well laterally, and I'm not sure that he ever will. On the flip side, Toppin was an offensive juggernaut and put together one of the most efficient seasons in college basketball history. I like him as a player, but don't be surprised if he falls on draft day. Number 6 is James Wiseman. Wiseman is someone you can talk yourself into being easily the best player in the class, or a quote-unquote bust, just given the day. His athleticism will carry him a long way, but if he's closer to DeAndre Jordan or Mitchell Robinson than Chris Bosh or AD, which is highly likely, I'm not sure he's a guy you can count on down the stretch of big games in the modern NBA. Killian Hayes is a smooth lefty with a D'Lo-like game. The funny thing about this draft is most of the teams at the top don't naturally have a spot for the top guys. Though I think LaMelo Ball is a better prospect, Killian Hayes fits better with the Timberwolves, for example. And what's better than one D'Angelo Russell? 2. In all seriousness, Hayes is locked in as a top 5 guy in this draft for me. Number 4 is Denny Avdia. I moved him from 3 to 6, and now he's at 4, and I think this is where he'll stay for me. His feel for the game and ability to handle and make plays for others at the wing spot is intriguing. If he can become a knockdown shooter, I say there's a good chance he could become the best player in the draft. Number 3, we've got the prototypical modern big in Onyeka Okongwu. Now he's not Bam Adebayo, and that's perfectly fine. What Okongwu is though, is someone with tremendous upside on both ends of the floor. He made several plays a game that told me he still has a ton of room to grow as a player, and that is a good thing. I truly believe that he should be in that conversation as a top 3 pick in this draft. Now at number 2, I have LaMelo Ball. I previously ranked LaMelo and Anthony Edwards as 1A and 1B, and I feel the same way about them. In my eyes, they are the 2 most talented players in the draft, and though they may have some glaring weaknesses, their upside is too high to pass up. But I do think Edwards' weaknesses are easier to fix and less glaring than LaMelo's. While they were both pretty bad defenders in 2 different arenas, Edwards' effort was his biggest issue. LaMelo, on the other hand, just isn't someone who I think has the physical tools or mentality to flip that switch and say, alright, you're not scoring these next couple of possessions. Thank you all for watching and rocking with the content. We're really close to 10,000 subscribers, which was one of my New Year's resolutions this year. In January, I think we had about 1,500 of y'all, so the growth has been amazing, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to be a part of the basketball community on a grand scale. We've got all types of basketball content coming soon, so stay tuned, and by the time the draft comes around, the 2020 college basketball season and possible G League tourney will start up, and I know y'all are going to want some videos on that. Anyways, just know I keep it official around here, and I really put a lot of time and effort into these videos because I love the game and just want to share some of my hard work with the world. It's Keandre from Hoop Intellect, and I'm out.
And you know I get around.